Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020, or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. After getting shut out yesterday, the Rays put up 9 on the board against the New York Yankees tonight, and because of that, it is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 10:37 on this Thursday night on the William Haynes Show. This Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. The Rays get back in the win column tonight with a 9-1 victory over the New York Yankees, avoiding the sweep. They also approach 20 wins before 20 losses, as they are now 20-19 on the season. They're staying in the mix in the American League East, still just 3 games back of first place, which is the Boston Red Sox, who I guess got off the schneid a little bit with their win tonight over the Oakland A's. But more importantly is tonight's Rays win. And by the way, if you're listening to the program and you'd be interested in calling in and maybe sharing some of your thoughts about the Rays, number to call 877-566-1020. You'd love to hear from each and every one of you. Obviously, much more positive thoughts, positive feelings going around compared to especially the last couple of days. As I said, a pretty big deal, I think, for the Rays to avoid the sweep for multiple reasons. Obviously, the more literal one is you stay around closer in the standings, and the Yankees, I think, going into tonight, were just a game back of first place, so there was a potential for them to maybe be tied for first by the end of the night, and that's where things start to get a little bit tricky, because I don't think any of us are quite worried about the Red Sox in first place, but when the Yankees, if they ever take first place, that's when the concern starts to set in, because they obviously have that potential to win 100 games this season, if not more. And certainly in this series, it looks like New York has found a bit of a stride. So good for that purpose, but also just to maintain just a sense of, like I said, positive thoughts, because things can definitely go awry. And with baseball being the mental sport that it is, we all understand that. 3 losses against a team that you have historically, over the last couple of seasons, been very dominant against, you can start to get in your own head a little bit, and things can go down from there. Going into this series, the Rays had won their last 7 series against New York, and obviously their first series lost, but they do avoid the sweep in the process. Dropped the Yankees to 20-17. And not to bury the lead, of course, which is really, I think, Rich Hill's performance tonight. He gets the victory. He's now 2-1 on the year. Got over the 100 pitch mark for, I believe, the first time this season. And in doing so, 6 2/3 of no run ball. So almost 7 innings shutout, just 3 hits allowed, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts. And like I said, the best that he's looked in a Rays uniform wearing the Columbia blue now during the week is something that can happen now. I believe his 9-year-old son keeps asking because the starting pitcher for at least for the Rays kind of decides what uniform is worn. And Rich Hill's last 2 starts have been in that Columbia blue, which previously had been reserved exclusively for Sunday home games, but the front office gave, I guess, Rich Hill clearance, or anybody for that matter, to wear the lighter shade of blues during the week, which I like. I like to shake it up a little bit. They've been wearing a lot of the navy lately, but enough uniform talk, more just about his performance. And I'm not quite ready to rescind my initial, I guess, verdict on Rich Hill. Of course, even as recently as last night, I was kind of down on him, although, again, he's looked very good lately. And he was 1 out away for his 18th consecutive shutout inning. So it's really an incredible stretch that he's on right now. 41 years old, very well traveled. I believe in a couple starts, I think it's May 24th, if he plays past that date, he'll be the oldest player to ever appear in a game for the Tampa Bay Rays. The current holder of that title would be Wade Boggs, of course. So Rich Hill will, unless something goes horribly wrong, will be reaching that mark, and kind of a cool story for that. But right now, with Michael Wacha being out of the rotation with what the hamstring issue, Rich Hill is basically that number 5 starter. And I know that this is not exactly the official rotation setting, but it's just the way it is right now. And typically, if you get 6 2/3 shutout from your number 5 starter, you are doing exceptionally well. And thankfully, the Rays did not waste that performance here tonight like they have done in games past, and they're able to take advantage. I think when you look at the offense, obviously we've learned, as this is game number 39 of the season, so we're not even at Memorial Day yet, and we've already learned the harsh lesson, and that you can't exactly expect the script to flip completely with one kind of slump-breaking performance. Typically that's been player to player, like maybe Meadows, who had a huge game tonight, or Lau, or Rosarena has a big hit, and maybe you think that's where things start to get turned around, and then we find out that it really isn't that way. But even for the team as well, they only did the Rays, just 1 run in the first 2 games of this series, 1 in game 1, and then of course getting shut out last night by Garrett Cole and Aroldis Chapman. So a good feeling certainly for the offense and for the team as a whole to put up all those runs that they did, and for the guys at the top of the order as well to do so, as Meadows added his 9th and 10th doubles of the season, as well as his team-leading 8th home run, and I believe he's leading the team in both of those categories, and is probably the RBI leader as well, with 4 runs knocked in tonight. And this is certainly not the night to be anti-Meadows, but it is interesting just to notice. Obviously, we've become quite familiar with him ever since, I think, August or September of 2018, that he's been a big league member of the Rays. And he's become very one-dimensional, I think, where all of his hits pretty much come from the bottom half of the strike zone, and probably 65% of those coming in that quadrant, the low and in to the left-hander Meadows, and that's where the home run came off of. And interesting, I'm talking about the 2-run homer in the 3rd inning for Meadows. And earlier in the count, Yankee starter Jamison Tyone threw a pitch down and in, and Austin Meadows pulled it, and it was very well hit, but it went just foul, but was nearly a home run. And the fact that Tyone threw that same pitch again later in the count, and Meadows took him out deep, pulled it again to the right field stands for, again, his 8th home run, and that leads the team. Previously, he was tied with Zunino with 7, but that's pretty much where all of his hits are coming from, and that just concerns me. Any team that, does their homework, a decent scouting approach, knows just don't throw those pitches. I would have to find, whether it's on Baseball Savant, Baseball Reference, whatever. He could not be hitting probably better than 100, in the top half of the strike zone, because his approach, and maybe not even his approach, just his natural swing undercuts the baseball so severely, and that any pitch, even middle, and he's routine pop-ups and flyouts, and that's where you get so frustrated, and he fouled off a couple pitches middle again tonight, and it's because of that swing or that approach, whatever it is that you want to call it. So I think if anything, that's on Jamison Taillon and the Yankees for not knowing that. I don't know if I can't imagine that would be part of anyone's discussion of tonight's game, whether it's Yankees post game, whatever. But that's just something I think to keep in mind. And while Meadows is leading the team in all those power numbers, as I mentioned, and right now he's batting just 208, but slugging 469, which is better than anyone in the lineup tonight. The only one near him is Joey Wendell, amazingly, at 435. So when he's not getting those pitches, he doesn't look very good, and to have him at the top part of your lineup is difficult. But again, there will be tonights like tonight where he will remind you of that player that he can be. But I think it's kind of similar with Arozarena, where Randy was getting like so many fastballs last year and into the postseason, and pitches kind of up in the zone. And he was just absolutely crushing them. And then, of course, baseball eventually will figure you out no matter who you are, unless you're, say, Jacob deGrom or Mike Trout. But anyone short of that, baseball will find a way to beat you. And Arozarena has been seeing, a lot more off-speed stuff, a lot of down and away. And he added his 4th home run of the year, and his first since April 23rd, which was another 3-run homer off of a 2-0 count, I believe. So that's kind of interesting as well. So good for Randy to get back in that power category as well. But back to my point is just changing approaches, and most teams, I think, are going to pitch Meadows up, and that's where you're going to see him be pretty ineffective. Again, he goes 3 for 5 tonight, and that performance pulls him up to 208. So I can't imagine he was very high above the Mendoza line going into the game. And again, to have him bat towards the top of the order is it's not questionable, because there's nowhere else really that you can put him. But it's just over the course of a full season, it's difficult to deal with. But then again, he's on pace for right now, 40, 45 home runs, something like that. And he could get there. I think he hit 33 home runs in 2019, but I think was hitting 291 that year as well. So the average was much better. But of course, we're not even 40 games into the year. So I think we covered the bases there. All the top storylines, of course, with Meadows and Arozarena, and a couple other doubles in there as well from Brandon Lau, his 5th, and Yandy Diaz, his 4th, which was just kind of a weak grounder down the left field line. So I'm not ready to say that the power numbers for Yandy Diaz are getting turned around just yet. But funny enough, you want to talk about, and we'll go to break right after this, but just the drastic difference between some of these offensive players. So Austin Meadows, as I said, a 208 average and a 469 slugging. And if you're not familiar, slugging is just at-bats divided by total bases instead of at-bats divided by hits, which is batting average. So it's more focused on doubles and home runs basically factored into that. And then you look at a guy like Yandy Diaz, he's batting 258 and slugging just 292. So a slugging just barely above his average, meaning basically almost every single hit is a single, and his on-base percentage is 400. So his on-base is like 100 points higher than his slugging, which I think is interesting. And Meadows' on-base is 100 points lower than his slugging. So it's just, I guess you would look at that as a good thing, that, again, versatility, and it is kind of funny when you do those deep dives, is it's not just the versatility on the surface as far as guys that can play different positions or whatever. It's just they've got a lot of different players with very different skill sets, and on a night like tonight, it really came together where guys that are supposed to walk, and guys that are supposed to hit in those situations hit and drive in those runs and things like that, and they were able to tie some things together. And nights like tonight that make you feel really good about this team and its potential, and in a way, really feels like it just kind of washes away the first 2 games of this series. And of course, that's a lot of recency bias going into that thought process, but nevertheless, that's at least how I feel, and think a lot of other Rays fans would agree with that sentiment. So with that being said, at 10:49, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we will continue our discussion of tonight's 9-1 win, put a bow and finish, kind of our recap of this series as a whole. And then at the end of the show, we have a series against the Mets to talk about. So another series against a team from New York. So very interesting stuff as we continue this discussion on Thursday night. Number to call during the break, if you'd like to call in and share your thoughts, you'd like to rave about the Rays rather than rant, or you could do that as well. 877-566-1020 number to call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBCOfficial. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
HBC. And at 10:52, we are back on the William Haynes Show, continuing our discussion of tonight's 9-1 win over the New York Yankees. Number to call the show, 877-566-1020. And before we get into the box score and all the things about tonight's game, just, of course, covering the storylines and all the news going into this game and coming out of the game as well. So probably the biggest storyline would be the COVID cases that the Yankees are dealing with. They had 7 coaches, and now Gleyber Torres tested positive, I guess a couple of days ago, because he was not in the lineup yesterday either and was not in the lineup tonight. So they had to activate Andujar to play third, and it was Urshela at shortstop. So, and just, I guess, to give you the headline, I guess it would be significant for anyone that's following Major League Baseball. Urshela did contract COVID last year or last offseason, whatever, and is also fully vaccinated. So that's been a big, I think, maybe not even in baseball, but just a big news storyline in general. That with the Yankees coaches as well, there was discussion that some of them were fully vaccinated, and I think that's one of the first times we've seen that occur, and there's been positive tests. The Yankees had 8 positives I guess going into tonight, and 7 of those were coaches that have been isolated and everything, and most are asymptomatic as far as that's concerned. But I know that was the top line on ESPN for a big portion of today, so there was a lot of eyes on that story, and how it affected this game. At least I think most literally would have been just Gleyber Torres' absence, and they put him on the COVID IL, and it looks like he's going to have to miss, I think, 2 weeks is the protocol. And so Miguel Andujar, who has not found a lot of success since his rookie year in 2018, is going to be getting some probably everyday playing time for New York. So that's significant, and at least in a team with the Yankees that's one game out of first place. So that will be interesting to see how that goes. Also, Rays hitting coach Chad Mottola I suppose, was made available to the media prior to the game. I doubt, he was volunteering himself to do that. That's probably from the front office or the communications department, whatever, because, of course, getting shut out last night and scoring only one run the day before, the story, all the attention, all the discussion was on the offense, or rather lack thereof, and its lackluster performance as of late. And so, and a lot of people have been calling for his job. I don't know that that's coming from anyone legitimate. What I mean by that, it's not Mark Tompkin for the Times or, any writers for the team, but a lot of fans, and of course the broadcasters and the writers try to tamper that down, obviously. But Chad Mottola, and I thought he did a really good job. I just saw the quotes coming out of it. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but just that it's still very early in the season, and I think we have to kind of readjust our mindsets a little bit. This is not a 60-game season, and could you imagine if it was? We're already 39 games in. That's crazy to think about. But no, it's a 162-game season. There's about 4.5 months left of the year. A lot of things are going to change, and he discussed changes in swings for a couple of guys. Willy Adames, who apparently has a hitting coach that is not a member of the Rays, so kind of a personal coach that Adames has sought out separately from the team, had, I guess, altered his swing, and going into the year, obviously his numbers have not been very good. He's hitting under 200, and the strikeout numbers are through the roof, and obviously he's been one of the biggest gripes of Rays fans offensively. And Mottola saying that basically they're just trying to work things through and maybe make some adjustments off of that adjustment. And mentioning the other guy with Randy Rosarena, who last night they changed his approach to maybe have him, I guess, a little bit lower to the ground so he can see the baseball a little bit better. So I think that also serves as a reminder that these guys know a lot more about baseball than myself, and I would gander to guess a majority of the people listening, because of course people employed by Major League Baseball teams, coaching, baseball ops, whatever, they are very well versed in that stuff. And so it's a good reminder that, more than likely they've got this under the control. They know what they're doing. They're going to get this thing figured out. That was one of the reasons why I spent a good portion of the lead of this show discussing Austin Meadows, and his struggles would not be the right word to use, but just his performance right now. And Meadows, a guy that I don't think is going to change. He is what he is at this point, and I think with guys like Adames, I would probably say, he is what he is, and you just kind of have to work around it. So some guys could change, and a lot of guys, we've seen Kiermaier, change his approach every offseason, and by the end of April, he's the same player he always is. So, that's kind of the two sides of that coin. Is yes, it's a long season, things can change, but I understand, the thought process of, well, a lot of guys typically don't change. So, that's an interesting storyline to track, and really the first time that Chad Mottola, I guess, has really had the mic put to him, because I guess the Rays have kind of kept him wrapped away as of late with all the, I guess, people calling for his job and whatnot. But no, he's not going anywhere. Everyone's confident in the process. There was a lot of, I trust the process, all that stuff. Kevin Cash actually did a mid-game interview, which I can't remember the last time I've seen that in a regular season game. We see it in spring training all the time, but this is a real game that counts. And Cash is doing an interview. It was in the middle of the third inning, and Dwayne Staats on Bally Sports Sun was asking him about the offense and that, how the coaching staff is going to change their approach. And of course, Kevin Cash, being the jokester that he is, always keeping things light, he basically just said, I need to stop giving these guys, hitting lessons and let Chad and the other coaches, and Ozzie Timmons, the first base coach, also is kind of a hitting instructor. So that was kind of funny. And Kevin Cash always with a self-deprecating humor, because of course, his major league career, and he was not, ever a terrific hitter. So by major league standards, at least, much better than a lot of people. But funny that he would take that opportunity to make a joke rather than kind of make something serious out of it, which I think is the right move, and I think really changes the tone. And I think this is all working in tandem. The 9 runs tonight, Chad Mottola before the game kind of putting the kibosh on some of the stuff and saying, let's take a deep breath, and Cash with a joke. So I think that's all going to work together, and hopefully things get turned around for the better. And in saying that, it's not like, okay, one day things are going to click and, they're scoring 4 or 5 runs every night, because that's just not going to happen. No matter what, we are going to see the ebbs and flows. And there was an interesting, it's on r/Tampa Bay Rays if you haven't already seen it. And I'll put it up on my Twitter at WHBC Official as well. Just that. The chart was strength of schedule in comparison to basically team record, and the Rays going into today were at 500, but they had played the toughest schedule far and away out of really anyone else in baseball, and they've played more teams above 500, 3 more at least going into the week than anyone in the majors. So that has a big part of it as well, and not even that. They've also just faced a lot of good pitching specifically. The Blue Jays, Athletics, Astros, and even the Yankees here in this series, at least with Cole and Montgomery at least. So and that's not always going to be the case. You're going to have that 4-game series against the Angels where you're seeing some not so good starters. They're going to get some chances, this weekend against the Mets. You've got the Orioles, the Phillies, who's got a horrible pitching staff as a whole. You're going to face Texas again, Baltimore again, Seattle. So, and I mentioned this last night as well. It's just there are going to be ebbs and flows, and you have to ride the wave when it's there and really stack wins, because there are going to be stretches where it feels like you can't get a run to save your life, and you're just going to have to live with that and scrap as much wins out of that period as you can get. And I think give credit to the Rays for doing so, because I would say outside of those little blips, like that 4-game sweep of Anaheim, the Angels, pretty much the entire season has been that low point where, the fact that they're a game above 500, with all that being said, and that's due obviously in credit to the tremendous pitching and the tremendous defense, because it seems like every other team right now is really playing horribly defensively. But the Rays are making a lot of plus plays. 2 double plays turned tonight, 4 overall in the series. There was also a caught stealing last night as well. So a lot of outs recorded for the Rays defense on the base path, which is certainly that's a help when you can get it. And I think something I've been thinking about that as well, with the Rays defense probably being better by any statistic, whether defensive runs saved or any metric you want to use. But even just cashing it on routine plays and making a lot of plus plays, just taking hits away. The kind of excuse that I've heard about the Rays offense is, well, look, every team is going through this. This is an historic slump that every team in the majors is going through. I think Major League Baseball's batting average is like 238 right now, which is extremely low. And we're on pace for the worst offensive season since the dead ball era. And obviously that's not going to hold true as the weather gets warmer. And obviously we're barely a sixth into this season, so things are going to change. But just that, every other team is hitting poorly, so it's no surprise that the Rays are too. But what I would respond to that is, if the Rays play like everyone else, they're not gonna win. The Rays are playing a different sport than other teams in this league. Obviously, the payroll is the reason why. They just don't have the same resources. So, in saying that, they have to find other ways to win. They can't play the same team. I hate to quote this because I quote it all the time, but from the Moneyball movie, and the book is a terrific read as well. Billy Beane in the scouting room, they're talking about the draft, and all the scouts are bringing up these players that they can't afford to replace the guys that they lost. And Billy Beane said, if we play like the Yankees in here, meaning, in the front office in the scouting room, we will lose to the Yankees out there, pointing to the field. And that's really the perfect description that I could give of the Rays. It's the same thing as when every other team is struggling, the Rays have to be better than everyone else. And in regard to the defense, that is a perfect example of them doing that. But an example of them falling in line with everyone else is with the hitting. And with this team, anytime you're squeezed for payroll, it's always going to be the offense that struggles, because the Rays have found out that pitching and defense is much cheaper than offense. So that's why they've decided to go in the direction of run prevention rather than run, creation, I guess you would say. So, but it's good because there will be nights where the Rays only score 2 runs and they'll win, and they have done a lot of that already. They've had shutout wins where they've won 1-0. So if that's what it's going to take, that may not hold through a full season, but if the pitching and the defense can stay at this level and the offense can maybe just heat up a little bit, this team is going to find a groove. They'll be 5 games over. Then by, June or July, 10 games over, whatever, if this offense does, start cooking a little bit more. That is certainly my expectation and my prediction as to what this team could be, but it's obviously going to take work and some things are going to change. But they don't even have everyone in their lineup right now. Francisco Mejia, who's been a big contributor, and Kevin Kiermaier, who's certainly had moments, are not with the team right now. So, things could change with that. And of course, Vidal Brujan and Wander Franco and all those guys at AAA Durham that have been, hitting the crap out of the baseball and really having a nice start. They could be joining the team, of course, at some point. So I think things are only going to get better. This is going to be the worst part of the year. I truly believe that. The schedule was very rough to start the season. So a night like tonight gives you hope that things are going to start getting turned around in the right direction. So you want a speech? There's the speech. You get it. So with that being said, I think we've got all our bases covered. No, we do have one more news item. Ji-Man Choi there was talks that he could be activated today. Obviously, he was not. Kevin Cash, I guess the only thing that he said about that is they're going to check in with him as far as the soreness in the knee. And then he said that they're hoping that they won't have to send him back to Durham. So that was surprising to me that I didn't even know that was a consideration. Because there was a reason why they flew him back here was because they were anticipating activating him to the major league roster. He was in AAA Durham. He could have stayed there, but I'm hoping he doesn't have to go back to Durham, and we could see him activated obviously as early as tomorrow or later this weekend, and we'll just have to see as far as that goes. And that's really the only update that we have is they're just continuing to check in because he's not feeling so great with the knee, so maybe it's just a thing where he takes a couple days off, and they'll be back in shape, and they're not going to get him at 100% no matter when he comes back. So that's the problem is I don't think we'll be getting the Choi back that we think we'll be getting, but I guess you'll take whatever you can get right now. And recently from Tompkin on Twitter, the Rays optioned Lewis Head to Durham again. What is this, the 6th or 7th time they've done this already, which creates a spot to activate Castillo. So that's just Tompkin, I think, trying to connect the dots. That's not a move that's been made official, but as far as I've heard, Castillo with the groin issue is ready to be activated, so it would probably be him. I think the move that you're going to see when Choi is ready to come back, they're going to option Padlo, Kevin Padlo, the infielder. So I think those are the 2 moves to be made, and I think that's you can't talk about that enough, getting Castillo back. I think he's been the best high-leverage reliever that the Rays have had this year, so to get him back, and that would explain why Lewis Head went an inning and a third after going an inning and 2/3 last night. So I didn't think he'd be available tonight, but he won't have to pitch for another couple days. AAA doesn't need him. Obviously, it doesn't matter if they win or lose, really. So they got some outs out of him. So 9 outs out of Lewis Head the last 2 nights, so that's a pretty big deal, and they're able to option him out and bring Castillo back. So, and that's good for Castillo that it's a lower body issue. I don't know. I can't imagine how much the groin could be holding him back from doing what he does, but we'll certainly see. And if he's activated, would be ready as early as tomorrow in a safe situation against the Mets tomorrow night. So that's very exciting to see as they start to get some of these guys back. Another guy that should be back soon is Michael Wacha. They had him do some throwing, I guess, in the cage or whatever earlier today with the right hamstring tightness. So again, another lower body injury for a pitcher. He should be ready. Interesting with Wacha. I'm not sure really where he fits into this rotation moving forward. I think they're getting to the point now where obviously Glasnow, your ace. Yarbrough has really been your 2, but now, McClanahan is being stretched out fully to a starter as your 2. And Yarbrough is kind of your 3 now. Then you've got Fleming and Patino two guys that can work, behind an opener or whatever, but both can be starters as well. And Patino, they're trying to get stretched out. It's a slow process, and I think Fleming will be the odd man out. And then you've got Rich Hill, and by no means I think would you take Waka over Rich Hill right now, and a lot of that is with what Hill put out tonight. But I don't really know. With Waka major league contract, they can't send him down, so they're going to have to activate him, I guess, eventually when he's ready. But like I said, I would hate for them just to send Fleming down just because I think Fleming is better than Waka, maybe not by a significant margin, and so maybe that's the Rays don't really mind. But that's something to keep an eye on, and as far as we know, that's really the only injury news. Chris Archer recently to the 60-day IL. He's still a pretty far ways away, and Francisco Mejia with the intercostal discomfort, which is, I guess, between your ribs. He was ready. They said he was ready to play before he was on the IL on the bench, and then they just decided to put him on the IL out of caution. So he should be back sooner rather than later. And as we mentioned before, it looks like Castillo will be activated maybe as soon as prior to tomorrow's game. So yes, with all that out of the way, we finally now will get into tonight's 9-1 win. So in 3 hours and 5 minutes and in front of a paid attendance of 6,229, which was the best out of the 3 games of the series, it was the Rays 9-1 over the Yankees. New York drops to 20-17. Tampa Bay improves to 20-19, including 8-12 at home. How that affects the division standings. New York now 2 games back of first in 3rd place, and the Rays improved to 3 games back in 4th place, and Toronto's at 2nd at 20-16, by the way. Getting the win, it's Rich Hill in his best start of the year. He's now 2-1 on the year. 6 2/3 shutout baseball, 9 walks, 3 hits, and 3 walks. And getting the loss for New York, now 1-3. Jameson Taillon in just 4 2/3 gives up 4 earned runs, 2 walks, and getting 9 strikeouts as well. For New York, 1 run on 5 hits, 1 error for them. And for the victorious Rays, 9 runs on 10 hits and no errors for them. So another stellar game defensively played for Tampa Bay. And the lineup card defensively first in the outfield from left to right. It's Randy Arozarena in left, Brett Phillips in center, Manuel Margot in right, and then in the infield from third to first, Mike Brasso at third base, Joey Wendell at shortstop, Brandon Lau at second. It was Yandy Diaz at first. Kevin Smith did the catching, and the DH was Austin Meadows. So certainly a couple of changes being made from expectations. Taillon being the right-hander. You would expect the the lefty Wendell to be in the lineup tonight. He was not, and the off day for Adames. And we've certainly seen more of those than I think we would have expected going into the year. I think if he was hitting better, he would be playing more. So his defense has been good, but I mean they got a good game out of short from Wendell, and he always puts out a nice performance at that shortstop position. And the other move, Kevin Smith getting the start at catcher, we touched on that that was certainly possible. Mike Zunino has played 6 out of the team's last 7 games. He's been the everyday catcher since Mejia went down, as opposed to kind of the day on, day off that they were doing before. So Kevin Smith gets in the order tonight. He gets his first hit of the year after getting his first at-bat last night. So that was good to see for him. And he goes 1 for 4 and reaches base on a catcher's interference. I believe the first of those that we've seen this year. And so they don't count that. So that's 1 for 3 with catcher's interference. So for him in his limited action, he's batting .250 so far. And so with Wendell moving to shortstop without Adames, someone's got to play third base. And so they put Mike Brasso there, and I thought he played very well defensively. And then Brandon Lau, the everyday second baseman. Again, they go Yandy at first, and he had some very nice plays there defensively. And one on the double play, the 6-3 and the 6th, where Joey Wendell, it was a tough throw, and it came in kind of low, and a tremendous pick by Yandy Diaz over there at first. So very good defensively, and kind of that same outfield alignment. With Kiermaier out, Phillips is going to be the everyday center fielder. Margot can play there as well, but they like him in the corners right now. And then take the DH off of Randy and put it on Meadows, which is what they did 2 nights ago. So that's right now where they're kind of alternating that spot. And Randy played fine and well in left, made the final out defensively, and then Margot good and right as well. So everyone defensively did their part. And then the way that the order shaked out, it was Randy hitting leadoff, followed by Meadows and Margot. Brandon Lau batting cleanup. Yandy 5th, Joey Wendell 6th, and a 7-8-9 of Kevin Smith, Brett Phillips, and Mike Brasso. Overall, I'm a fan of this lineup, and of course, when the team scores 9 runs, it makes that much better. But I think even going into the game, I was a fan of it. Randy, I think, is going to be the leadoff hitter. I don't even think it matters righties versus lefties, and that held out today against the righty Tyon. That's just where they want him to bat right now. I think, and I fallen victim to this already this year, in that I think we're looking too much to the past, or I guess I should just speak for myself. That I look for a leadoff hitter to play in that more traditional role, where I want you to see pitches, get on base if at all possible, but really just make the starting pitcher work for it. And I think maybe where the Rays' philosophy changed was that one night against, I want to say, the Athletics at home, where they let Kevin Kiermaier hit leadoff for the first time, and that was after Yoshi, I guess, got relegated from the leadoff spot. They tried Yandy there as well, but didn't really work out very well. And on the first pitch of the game, Kiermaier doubled, and I think the team went on to win that game, and he certainly gave them a spark. And so since then, they've passed the leadoff spot off to Randy Arozarena, and he really does the same thing. He's very good. I think it just being electric. He's not just going to sit there and take a bunch of pitches like a guy like Yandy Diaz, but the potential for the double or the home run is certainly greater. And also, once he gets on the base path, he's more of a weapon. He's probably one of the best base stealers they have, and is much quicker running the bases than Yandy Diaz is. So as far as scoring first inning runs, which the Rays have certainly struggled with, I think their first time doing that since like April 27th, scoring a first inning run at home, and their first inning run period since May 4th. So it's been already 9 days. So that's a long stretch without scoring in the first inning, and I think that's where the Rays are at their best, especially scoring first. And if you score in the first inning, there's a very good chance that you're going to be the first team, obviously, to score. So that's the thought process with Randy hitting leadoff. He flew out to left to start the game in a pretty quick at bat, but like I said, we're no longer, I guess, judging the leadoff spot off of pitches seen. I think with Randy now, it was a 1-0 count, and he got a slider at 882 in the middle part of the plate to swing at, and so he did so. And so I don't really knock him for that, and that's really what they want now. For Randy goes up there to start the game. If the first pitch you get that's decent, swing at it. We want action. We want electricity to start the game, and I really, I can't complain about that. I think that will eventually work in the Rays' favor. Meadows obviously going to hit at the top of the order. Margot, he had a rough night last night. He goes 1 for 5 tonight with a single in the first inning and scored the game's first run. So kind of a tough night at the plate for him, and he's hitting 221, but he's going to hit it at the top of the order. Brandon Lau continues to hit leadoff, and then Yandy right now at the middle of the order. I think that's where he's going to be, because if he's not hitting leadoff, he's not going to be at the top, and he's not going to hit cleanup. So he's just going to be your walk and single guy in the middle of the order, and then kind of your 6, 7, 8 hitters are going to have him on base potentially to drive in, and Wendell at the bottom. And then I liked moving Phillips from 9 to 8 and opening the 9 spot for Mike Brasso, who's really having a rough patch, so just have him in the 9 spot. And I think overall the lineup worked really well as a whole. They struck out 16 times, walked 5 times, so even though they scored all these runs, they struck out a bunch. And I think this is the second time where they've scored I think like 6, 7, 8 runs while striking out 15 or more times. I know that's not a very official stat, but that's definitely a hard thing to do, and the Rays have done it. They're leading Major League Baseball in strikeouts. They're leading Major League Baseball in strikeouts against left-handed pitching. They're leading Major League Baseball in strikeouts with runners in scoring position. So any way you want to look at it, the Rays are striking out way too much. And and obviously that's where all the Chad Mottola stuff is coming from. And everyone in the lineup struck out tonight. And Brandon Lau was the only one who hadn't, and he struck out for the last out in the 8th inning looking. So that was interesting. And that's another thing as well is a lot of strikeout looking the last couple of days. So that's a whole new problem. Obviously, when you're chasing pitches and stuff, that's where traditionally you think of the strikeout. But looking, taking pitches that are in the strike zone that you should be swinging at, that's a big gripe that I've had with some of these guys. And that's not a good sign to see. But obviously, with the 9 runs, and they know what they're doing. I don't remember the exact stat, but with that strikeout for Lau against the lefty Justin Wilson in the 8th, I believe it put him at like 3 for 39, I want to say, against lefties this year, something along those lines. And he's been traditionally, I think going into the year, like a 300 hitter career lifetime against lefties, which lefty on lefty, that's typically not traditional, but I guess just with his play style, that's just what it has been. So that's a big part of their struggles against left-handed pitching this year, and they're very awful against lefties. So that's something that's obviously going to need to change. They've been much better against righties, though, I guess is the glass half full approach to that. So I don't know against a lefty. I think they're seeing a lefty tomorrow, right? In David Peterson. Let's see. He is a lefty, so I don't know that Brandon Lau would be in the order tomorrow as far as that's concerned. So we'll see how that continues to trend, and they're going to need him to be better, obviously, in that regard if they want the offense turned around. So we'll go one by one here quickly, I guess, for everyone, because we haven't done that in quite some time, and scoring a lot of runs, this is a good opportunity to do so. So Randy, leading off, he goes 1 for 3 tonight with 2 runs scored, 3 knocked in, 2 walks, 1 strikeout. His average is up to 260, an on base of 358. So a guy that was hitting 300 a couple weeks ago, the average has fallen pretty greatly, but he's put up some good performances here as of late. Flew out to start the game to left, then worked a leadoff walk in the 3rd and came across to score. Struck out to start the 5th. And then in the 6th inning, just like he did for his last home run on the 23rd of April, with 2 men on and in a 2-0 count, he hit a baseball. It was 397 to left for a 3-run shot that gave the Rays a 7-0 lead, extending it from 4-0. So that was the big Randy play of the night, his 4th home run of the season. And then in the 8th inning, he was walked again. I would say it was more he was walked rather than he walked. It was much more in the pitcher. But that was in a situation where they had runners at the corners with 1 out, so that he walked to load the bases for Meadows, who had a double thereafter. So that was good and kept the line moving. So Randy, I would say, honestly, Randy taking a lot of those pitches may not be him at his best, but I think with the pitching, at least specifically that he was seeing tonight, it worked out. And whenever he can get in hitters counts, I think that's the main thing is I don't necessarily need to see him walking, but on a 2-0 count, I would like to see more of, the home run, the power numbers, and that's obviously much easier said than done, but that's where he's made his bread and butter and become kind of the impact dynamic player that he is right now. So, and only 1 strikeout in there as well. So overall, very, very good night for Randy Arozarena. Batting second, Austin Meadows, the DH. He goes 3 for 5, so a big night for him. A run scored, 4 knocked in, no walks, 2 strikeouts, an average that's up to 208, an on base of 318, and I think a team leading slugging with 469. struck out for the second out in the first with nobody on. Then in the third inning, with a man on and no outs, hit a home run that gave the Rays a 4-0 lead, 393 to right field. And that was that at bat that I had mentioned earlier against Jameson Taillon, where he had gotten a pitch down and in earlier in the count and narrowly hit it foul, just barely foul. And then later in the count, Taillon gave it to him again and hit a home run on it. He was getting some, and it was in a full count, he was getting 3-2 fastballs as well, middle part of the plate that he was fouling off. So that's been a big frustrating part. I know he hit a huge home run in Anaheim on a pitch middle, so has shown that potential. But, it's middle or down and in is the only pitches that he's really doing any kind of damage off of. So that's, I guess, something to keep in mind. In the fifth inning with one out and the bases clear, hit his 9th double of the season. Struck out looking with the bases empty in the 6th right after the Randy home run. And then in the 8th inning with the bases loaded, hit a 2 RBI double, his 10th double of the season. And that made it 9-0 at that point, so that they were just piling on. But good for him to come through, especially with runners in scoring position. That's a place where he's looked not so good, so that's good to see. Get that average up a little bit. Again, he hit 292, I think, 291 in 2019, and he's hitting 208 right now. So a long way to go, I guess, in that regard. Hitting third, Margot had a bit of an off night, 1 for 5, a run scored, no walks, 2 strikeouts, an average, I think that's down to 221. He's been an extremely clutch hitter, but I guess with the average not coming through as much as he'd like. 2-out single in the first inning and came across a score for the first run of the night. Then with the bases clear, lined out to right field in the third, struck out with a man on second in the fifth, struck out to start the seventh, and with a man on second and 1 out, popped out to the second baseman in the eighth. Batting cleanup, Brandon Lau, 1 for 4, a run scored, a walk, a strikeout. He's still under the Mendoza line at 198. And I guess I forget sometimes how, bad he's been this season, but has been heating up as of late. And on base of 299, a slugging of 381. Doubled to make it second and third with 2 outs in the first. Grounded out with the bases clear in the third. Walked with a man on second and 2 outs in the fifth. Grounded out to second base with 1 out, no on in the seventh, and then struck out looking with a runner on second in the eighth against a lefty. So, again, his struggles against left-handed pitching continues. Batting fifth, Yandy Diaz, 2 for 3 with 2 runs knocked in, a walk, a strikeout, an average that's up to 258, and on base of 399, a slugging of 292. So, again, it's singles, and walks as well. Hit a 2 RBI single with runners on second and third with 2 outs in the first. So we see a lot of singles from Yandy, but not many clutch singles, it seems. And he did just that in the first inning. Hit a double with no man on and 2 outs in the third. Just a soft kind of grounder down the left field line that slowly rolled all the way to the wall that allowed him to scoot to second base. So not like the power double off the wall that you're thinking of. Struck out looking with 2 on in the fifth. So that's not good to see, especially in that situation. If you're going to go down, at least go down swinging. Walked with 2 outs, bases empty in the seventh. And then after that walk was pinch run for by Padlo, who actually came in and played first base. I thought they would have moved Padlo to third and had Brasso over to first, but they just kept Padlo at first, which is fine. I'm sure he's done that in the minor leagues, so they're comfortable having him over there. So a good numbers night for Yandy. I mean, reaches base 3 times in 4 plate appearances, so 75%. I like that. I like to see that. Towards the bottom of the order, there's not much to say. Not a lot of big situations. I'm talking about Wendell, Smith, Phillips, and Brasso. And I don't really, I don't need to read them off. You're watching the game or you've seen it. But I will say Phillips, the bottom of the order is just striking out too much. Wendell 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Smith 1 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Phillips 1 for 4, 3 strikeouts. Brasso 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. So You would expect the bottom of the order is not producing quite at the level as the top, and that certainly was the case tonight. Wendell, I think, just kind of an off night. Smith is still getting settled in. I mean, 1 for 3 is not bad. Did get his first hit of the year. Phillips, I think, 219 average. That's who he is. I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. He'll run into one occasionally, but I think struggles working at bats and finds himself down in counts way too early. Needs to do a better job of kind of controlling the strike zone and things like that and staying calm in at bats. He seems a little bit wild and out of control up there. So that's my thoughts on him. And then Brasso, an average that's down to 163. I saw people talking that maybe he should be sent down to the minors. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I think he's a pretty developed major league player at this point and has played tremendous defensively. But obviously with the bat has struggled. I can't exactly put my finger on what's been the issue for him, but an on base of 221 is not very good, so he's not walking very much either. And kind of like Phillips, and like with Adames and with Kiermaier and with Lau, anyone that's struggling, it's like they come up to the plate and they're down 0-2, like right off the bat. It's just, I don't know exactly how Yandy Diaz does it, but he's a guy, watch him. He's just so good at controlling the strike zone, controlling the count, making the pitcher work to him rather than the other way around. So obviously a lot of guys could benefit with having a little bit more Yandy Diaz in their game, but obviously, and one thing I wanted to mention about Yandy Diaz, has not hit a home run since August of 2020. A guy that had, I think, 19 home runs in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere along those lines, 18, 19 home runs, and had 2 in 2020, which it's a weird year, and then no home runs here this year, and just 4 doubles. So again, walks and singles. I don't know exactly what's caused this change. He was brought in from Cleveland in that trade with the Jake Bauers trade because he was hitting, his exit velocity was like super high, higher than almost anyone in baseball, but his batting average was not high just because he was hitting it on the ground so much. And so they brought him in with the intention of getting his launch angle up and getting those hard hit balls in the air and get some home runs out of it. And in 2019, they got that. And, of course, that home run to lead off the American League wildcard game that year is what we'll always remember him for, and another home run later in the same game. That's really what Yandy Diaz was. And in 2020, his swing was late, and that's why he was hitting all those opposite field singles. And we're kind of seeing the same thing. And it's interesting. He takes more pitches outside the zone than anyone in baseball. And he swings at more pitches in the strike zone than anyone in baseball. So he's doing everything that you'd want to do, but it's just, I don't know what's going on. And it's going to get to the point where it's not a great thing. I mean, he's on base 40% of the time. That's terrific, but the guys around him can't really hit either. So having him on first base really doesn't do you any good. And I know that's kind of a pessimistic approach, but I think, and maybe that's more so the guys around him in the lineup's fault rather than his fault, because I guess he's doing his job getting on first, but I mean, no one else is able to move him over. So, and he's not a good base runner either. I mean, he's probably thrown out on the base paths more than almost anyone on the team. So, probably highlighted by him being on base so much again, but still the sentiment is the same. And so, I don't know. I don't think it's going to change, which is unfortunate. That's a change that's made from season to season, not like in the middle of a season. But he goes 2 for 3. And with that 2 RBI single, that's good to see. So having him at the 5 spot, there are going to be chances where he's up to the plate with men on base. And that's where the walk in the single really comes in, is when there's men on base. Because I love when there's a man on first and he walks, because that puts a man in scoring position. So I guess that's the bottom line with him. But a very interesting case study as far as a hitting approach and all those things, because from 2019 compared to now, he is a completely different baseball player. I mean, almost unidentifiable, just looking at the numbers and his approach. But yeah, it's the same guy, believe it or not. And so that was with the hitting. 3 for 11 with runners in scoring position, which doesn't seem great, but I mean, that's almost batting 300, so I'm fine with that. Left 7 men on base, but again, you score 9 runs, that's not an issue. And then the pitching, we talked about Rich Hill, 6 2/3 scoreless, 3 hits, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts, 104 pitches, a season high 67 strikes. 14 to 26 and establishing the first pitch strike, which is absolutely terrific. And got no complaints about him. I mean, a couple leadoff walks, but the double plays were in action tonight, certainly. And, he did a good job of overcoming things. More of a three-pitch guy now. A couple starts into the season has really found that cutter. So mainly kind of cutter curveball with the four-seam kind of off of that now is kind of his approach. And at the surface, not a guy that you would think would be difficult to face, but has become that over the last couple starts. Again, he was 1 out away from his 18th consecutive scoreless inning, and the guys have just had trouble squaring him up. And in the league right now where it seems like no one can hit, even he can find some success. And I certainly wish the best for him. He's a Rays pitcher, so I want him to do well. So interesting to see. I mean, he'll continue to be probably the 5 starter. That's kind of where they want him in that philosophy. I sold him way short. I thought maybe they'd get 4 innings out of him tonight, but that was mainly a pitch count thing. None of my wildest dreams did I think they were going to have 41-year-old Rich Hill go 104 pitches, but they did just that. He was obviously talking cash into bringing him back out for that 7th inning, and obviously he struck out Frazier and Andujar and was facing the 9-hitter Gardner. So, I mean, props to him, too. Facing the order a 3rd time through. Like to see it. And lefty on lefty for Hill. Cash comes out and pulls him. It doesn't bother me. I mean, Gardner in that spot probably works a 10-pitch at bat. And so you don't want to push Rich Hill to 115 pitches, certainly. So, at that time, the score was in the 7th inning. The score was 7-0, so it really didn't matter. At that point, you were just getting outs out of him to save the bullpen for this weekend. You also get Tyler Glasnow tomorrow, so in an off day on Monday as well. So the Saturday and Sunday games, they could go crazy with the bullpen if they want to, having Castillo back. So this is the first time that Castillo and Fairbanks, I think, are both pitching since the early part of the season, and Thompson, Kittredge, Reed. So the bullpen right now seems to be in good shape. Rich Hill leaves. Lewis Head comes in, gets the 4 outs. Perfect. 13 pitches, 9 strikes, and he was optioned back to Durham to make space for Diego Castillo. So props to Lewis Head. I think he's going to be kind of like Ryan Thompson was last season, where it's just a guy that you weren't expecting to come in, but just does his job whenever he's there. There's not a space for him right now, but I guarantee you someone's going to get hurt, whether it's Kittredge or Reed, those guys that I just mentioned, someone's going to go down. And right now, Lewis Head is probably the number one guy to take their place. Stetson Alley has been starting games for Durham. He was another guy that I thought would be coming up. He throws 100 with the fastball and all those things, but they may want to. That might be like a complete retooling of his career, because he was drafted as a hitter and made a mid-career position change and everything. So Stetson Alley, that might be a couple-year project. So right now, Lewis Head probably at the top of the list in Durham to come up if you need a reliever. And then Hunter Strickland finished the game pitching in the 9th inning. 1 run on 2 hits, a walk, no strikeouts, 21 pitches, 13 strikes, 3 for 5 with the first pitch strike. With that run allowed, bumped his ERA up to 1.69. So he's been really good, certainly exceeding expectations. Has not pitched in a lot of high leverage spots, but I think has done well with what he's got. And so guys like that, like Lewis Head and Strickland, that can save the rest of the bullpen and still be effective, I think is huge. So I like to see that. And that's pretty much all I can say about tonight's win. I mean, I could have gone into depth a little more about the scoring opportunities, but Austin Meadows really was running the show with the home run and the 2 doubles, and he was just getting pitches to hit. I think that was more of a story than anything else. And really just they were not facing good pitching. Jamison Tyon, I don't think is like any kind of answer. His ERA is up to 5.40 after tonight, and I can't imagine anyone in New York would be too incredibly pleased with him right now. And we knew that, out of all those acquisitions for New York, at least one of them wasn't going to work out. Corey Kluber has looked better, and so maybe Tyon is the guy that's not going to be so good. But, boy, he's gone through a lot in his life. So for Jamison Tyon, the person, definitely I wish the best. And but as far as the New York Yankee pitcher, that is not working out too exceptionally well right now. So 9-1 win. Prevents the sweep, which is good. That's what we like to see. And so we now turn the page to the series this weekend against the New York Mets. There's a game tomorrow night at 7:10, which will preview Tyler Glasnow and David Peterson. So let's actually go ahead and do that now, and we'll talk about the two games here in a second. So tomorrow, 7:10, David Peterson, the lefty, Tyler Glasnow, the righty. So Tyler Glasnow making his 9th start. Hard to believe we're already, the 9th turn through the rotation. We'll talk about Peterson first. The 25-year-old left-hander is 1-3 on the year with a 5.54 earned run average. Pitched terrific his rookie season last year, and obviously has not been so great here this season. His last time out against Arizona, an inning and 2/3, 3 runs on 3 hits, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, 55 pitches. Didn't even get out of the second inning. So that's not good, obviously. Then very average outside of that. 5 innings of a run against the Phillies. 6 innings of 2 runs against Boston. 3 1/3 of 3 runs against Chicago. 4 innings of 6 runs against Philly. So 3 of his 7 starts have been against Philadelphia. So that's kind of strange. Let's see. I don't recall if he faced the Rays last year or not, and he did not. So David Peterson does not look good. They'll certainly get their lumps against him, but his saving grace, I suppose, he is a lefty, which the Rays have very much struggled against this year. So as far as the lineup against him, obviously they're going to stack the righties. So in the outfield, they'll go probably Randy in left, Phillips in center, Margot in right. I mean, unless there's a righty they can put in the outfield and take Phillips out of the loop completely, but I don't think they would be able to do that. I mean, they're probably going to have him play in some kind of capacity. So yeah, Randy in left, Phillips in center, Margot in right, and then maybe you give Meadows the day off completely. Although you might want to kind of ride the wave with him. But I don't know lefty on lefty that you'd want that exactly. Maybe a pinch hit option off the bench. And then in the infield, third to first, they'll go righty heavy probably again. Probably Brasso maybe at third, although I don't know why they would want to have Wendell on the bench 2 days straight. It depends righty lefty. Brasso at third. Adames at shortstop. Lau at second. Yandy Diaz at first. And then probably Zunino to catch. And then the DH. Your options are a little bit limited, I suppose. You would have Wendell, you would have Meadows, and that's it right now. And Kevin Smith. So they're short on position players right now. So there's not a whole lot of variety as to what they would potentially go to. And then for the pitching side for the Rays, their ace Tyler Glasnow again making his 9th start. The 27-year-old right-hander is 4-2 on the year with a 227 earned run average. His last time out against the Oakland A's, taking the loss, 5 2/3 of 3 runs on 2 hits, 2 home runs, 4 walks, 11 strikeouts. So, like a lot of his starts this year, gave up the runs early on home runs and then really found a groove later in the start and struck out a bunch of guys. So, and threw 101 pitches in that start as well. And all of his starts are right around there at 101 or 99, something like that. So, the Mets have been red hot right now. I think they're on some kind of winning streak, and I know Francisco Lindor has started to heat up and all those guys, so maybe not the right time to see them. The Mets had an off day today. They were staying in the Vinoy, Dave Wills was saying, so the Mets are probably in good shape right now. So maybe not catching them again at the best time, but with Tyler Glasnow on the mound, I think a good start to the series. I mean, anytime you predict to start, you're talking 6 or 7 innings of 2 runs, 1 run, maybe shutout, maybe flirts with another no-hitter. I mean, you never know on any given night. He's super fun to watch. Probably the highest attended home game for him this season. I would imagine they're probably going to have 7,000 or 8,000 people at all those games this weekend. The Mets have not been at the Tropicana Field since 2015, and obviously there's a lot of Mets fans in this area, so If they had 15,000 seats available, I'm sure they would get close to that as well. But it's going to be very Mets heavy this weekend. I'll be going to the Saturday and Sunday contest. I've yet to watch Tyler Glasnow pitch this year. I'm hoping I could do that sooner than later, but thankful to be going to any games at all, especially right now. So it's great to be seeing baseball in person, no doubt. So Glasnow maybe goes 6 or 7. It's hard to predict he ever goes 7. So let's say he goes 6. And then you get everyone's available right now with Head and Strickland, the only guys pitching tonight. So let's say they go to Thompson in the 7th, Thompson or Kittredge in the 7th, Fairbanks in the 8th, and Castillo in the 9th, assuming he's activated. And so you could go, traditional setup man, closer type. And that's probably how it shakes out. So certainly looking forward to that. And then the other games in the weekend, and we'll talk about that further in depth tomorrow, is McClanahan and Lucchesi. And then unannounced for the Rays, it would be, I believe, Fleming's turn in the rotation, or rather Patino / Fleming, and then Marcus Stroman going for the Mets. So probably the best pitcher out of the weekend that we'll see. And then funny enough after that, the next game is against Matt Harvey, at least right now, former Met pitcher, so against the Orioles. So I certainly look forward to that. We will be on the air tomorrow night after the game, so same time, about 10:30 or so. Thank you to everyone for checking out the program, our typical listeners that are coming from the Rays Reddit page, the Rays Discord server, so certainly you can continue to find me there. I put out the link to the show, but if, certainly you can follow the show on where you're listening to this on Spreaker.com. Also follow at WHBC Official on Twitter. The link to the show goes live immediately on there whenever we start the show, so definitely check that out. Again, we'll be on tomorrow, hoping for another Rays win without a doubt. We look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.